This is our oral presentation of Into the Wild. The movie is about a clever and inspirational young man named Christopher/Alex. He is very angry with his parents and the way they live their lives because he believes that they are living a lie. He therefore, when he graduated from college, rejects society and wants to be an outcast and a rebel. He decides to donate all of his money and change his name and wants to go to Alaska on an adventure and to find the purpose of life. This he does in a very spontaneous way, without anything at all and without telling anybody. On his journey, he meets a lot of new people who inspires him, but he inspires them as well. He meets a lot of obstacles, but these helps him to form his journey and the person he becomes. We think it's a very inspirational movie, and we liked how it saw nature as an opportunity to live a free life and the way that he conquered everything on his way.
And now we will characterize Alex/Christopher. He rejects his family and every materialistic part of his life. He rejects society and the part of our world which human being created. He wants to live his life in a different way, alone. He wants to be free and live with the nature God placed around us. This is why we would characterize him as being very adventurous and brave, but at the same time self-centered and apathetic because it harms the people that loves him, and he's showing no interest, enthusiasm, or concern about it. This is also a proof of a very rebellious boy who doesn't care about anything. This means he's a rebel and also an outcast. It is also a proof of a very stubborn boy. So he went on this journey searching for the meaning of life in the wild. This is where we see a romantic and a poetic side of him in his search for absolute freedom. This means he's very free-minded and idealistic. But in the end, he realizes that even though he wants to live alone, then happiness is only real when shared. This means he comes to the conclusion that you need human relationships. On his journey, he meets an old man called Ron. Ron doesn't have anybody and has nothing to devote his life to. When he meets Chris, he finally sees the meaning with his life, and together they help each other grow. Chris is a very adventurous and he hates seeing Ron and the way he has given up on life. Chris says that Ron should explore nature one last time because it's never too late to admire God's great work. On the other hand, Ron wants to help Chris too. Ron doesn't have a family and can't stand the thought of Chris losing his family too. He wants him to forgive his parents and let them know he loves them. When Chris leaves Ron, Ron asks if he can adopt Chris. In this scene, it's very easy to see how apathetic Chris is. He doesn't show any emotion when Ron, while crying, asks if he can adopt him. This doesn't mean that Ron hasn't made an impact on Chris though. At the end of his journey, when he is about to die, he writes his real name so that people will know who he was, and they will get informed. Ron's advice about forgiveness and family has therefore helped Chris to see that you can live your life with only yourself in mind, and he therefore takes Ron's last name.
And now the themes. One of the themes could be man, nature, and city. The focus in the film is mainly the part with man and nature in harmony. He rejects the city and society. Here we see nature in contrast to the city and civilization. Looking for the meaning of life and freedom could also be a theme. Chris himself describes it as looking for ultimate freedom. Freedom from other people's rules and authority over him. To live completely alone in a world where the only laws and he feels the need to follow are those of nature is to him ultimate freedom. This level of freedom requires total isolation, for to be with others means to have obligations to them. Chris is living only for his own best interest. Forgiveness could also be a theme. Chris is unable to forgive his parents' mistakes, which seems to be at the center of his cruel and selfish behavior. His actions do great harm to those who love him most, his family. There is certainly more behind his odyssey than just anger at his parents, but his resentment of them spread into the rest of his life and seems to be closely connected to how isolated he becomes. One is left to wonder if McCandless in his last time found a way to forgive his parents. This is relatable to the theme family and relationships because of his lack of forgiveness. He simply values principles over people. He does not simply preach that his parents are too materialistic or state that he won't be as greedy as he believes them to be. Instead, he lives by anti-materialism and only making the bare minimum of money that he needs to survive. Another example is that Chris decides that he has a moral problem with gifts, so he will no longer accept or give them. Principles over people. But at his last time in the wilderness, he thinks of his family and home. And he writes, happiness is only real when shared, so that is also a theme. In the end of his partly lonely trip, he comes to the conclusion that you need someone to share life with.
We'll now relate the film to the theme Man, Nature, and the City and the poem The Tables Turned. We think you can relate the film to the poem The Tables Turned, which we read in class. This is also a poem with the theme Man, Nature, and the City. In The Tables Turned, you can see that man has a deep relationship with nature. It's said that nature could teach you more of man, moral, evil, and good than any man can. This is relatable to Into the Wild, where nature is also portrayed in this way. Nature is able to teach Chris a lot more than society can. In Into the Wild, nature is portrayed as in a natural and romantic way, but it's romantic in a different way, because it's very realistic and wild. It's not so perfect and without danger as most of the romantic poems portrayed in the poem The Tables Turned.